What's going on, everybody? You're watching youtube.com/iAlexOnline. My name is Alex, and today I'm going to teach you how to make your own custom amiibos. So, for the purposes of this video, I will be making a Yoshi being ridden by Mario. This is one of my first customs. I believe it's actually the second custom I've ever made, and I'm actually going to remake it for you guys today. It's one of my favorites. If you've ever played Super Mario World for the NES, or the Super NES for that matter, that is probably my all-time favorite Mario game. So I'm extremely excited for Super Mario Maker, when I'll be able to design my own Super Mario World levels. But yeah, the most iconic thing from that game is always having a Mario riding Yoshi with his yellow cape. The yellow cape is my favorite Mario power-up of all time, so naturally I love to put that yellow cape on my customs. And the box art and cover art for Super Mario World actually is Mario with the yellow cape riding Yoshi. So it's just a pretty iconic Mario image for me. So that's why I wanted to make it into a custom. I did get a lot of positive reviews on it when I posted it online, on Reddit, on my Instagram initially when I made it. So I'm going to be making another one for you guys today, show you how it's all done. Hopefully give you a few tips and tricks on how to make your own custom amiibos. So yeah, let's get started. Obviously, the first thing you're going to need for this project is your two amiibos. We will be using two, so this is a little bit more costly of a project since you do need both amiibos. Beyond that, you're only going to need to be really sculpting his cape, which we're going to be using Sculpey. You can use air dry clay. My first amiibo, I used air dry clay. It works pretty much exactly the same. Sculpey needs to be baked in the oven. Air dry clay obviously dries on its own. It probably takes a little bit longer to dry than the oven baked clay does, because obviously the oven bakes it much quicker than the air is going to dry air dry clay. Sculpey is actually a lot more secure than air dry clay as well. So air dry clay does crack a little bit easier. It's a little bit more fragile than Sculpey is going to be. So we're going to be using Sculpey. We will have to bake. And then we're going to need black for the back of his cape. The back of Mario's cape, yellow cape, super cape, is black. And then the front, the part that you see, is yellow. We also have an X-Acto knife, which we're going to need to sculpt our clay and cut our amiibos off their bases. And then super glue, obviously, to glue them both together. So we'll go ahead and we'll get Mario opened up first. I don't particularly care for the boxes and keeping them in pristine condition, so I just rip them apart. And we'll put Yoshi to the side for a moment. First thing we're going to do is we are going to take Mario off his base. So we're just going to take our X-Acto knife and we're very carefully just going to slice underneath the bottoms of his feet. You want to be careful doing this. I actually was making a Splatoon amiibo and I sliced my thumb completely open. Thought I might need stitches. It was pretty bad. There's blood everywhere. So these amiibos that I make really do get all my blood, sweat, and tears in them. But hopefully this one will be pretty safe. So we got one foot off already. You can see right there, it slices pretty easily off. You just want to go slow. Just move your knife back and forth a little bit, as you can see here, just to get it moving. And you're just going to want to slice as far down as you can on the foot. Now, this is the way I do it. Some people boil the amiibos to make them soft, or use a heat gun to make them soft, and you can just pull them off the base. It is possible. I've tried that as well. This is just honestly easier for me. You're making a custom amiibo. You're already going to be painting. So, as you can see, there's slight discoloration on the bottom of the feet. But again, we're going to be painting it anyways. So it's not a huge deal for me. Alright, so there's Mario off his base. If you just want an action figure, he does stand up on his own. You've got your amiibo chip inside here. We'll get to that later. As you can see, the base is still in pretty good condition, aside from obviously the brown foot marks. So the next thing we want to do is remove Mario's fireball, because he's not going to be burning Yoshi when he's riding on his back. So the way I do this is I honestly just pull it off. Again, you could boil this. It might be slightly easier, but for time's sake and because I'm a little bit lazy, I just pull it off. Just kind of wiggle it and it will eventually just pull out of the socket that it's in. And there you go. Now the inside of his hand does have a little bit of hole. We're going to have to fill that up with some Sculpey. And now we have a separate fireball removed from Mario's hand. So we'll go ahead and we'll open up our Yoshi. Alright, now that we got Yoshi removed, first thing we're going to want to do is just put Mario on his back and see how he fits. Now, I know, obviously, from previous experience, he does fit on his back. He does need a little bit of modification. So what we're going to want to do is, his shell is way too bulgy for Mario to sit on. Honestly, Mario, I give you credit, because that's a real hard shell on the back of your dinosaur. So riding around on him all day cannot be too fun. So we're going to want to trim down that shell. Again, you just take the X-Acto knife, slice off the top. Since Mario is going to be sitting on top of it, you're not going to see that, but we will cover it with a little bit of red-orange paint just to make it less visible in case there are some cracks that come through. So we'll go ahead and we will cut that shell off just very carefully again. Now, if you are under the age of 15, I do recommend having a parent help you with this. I only say that because when I was in middle school, I was in art class, and I was using an X-Acto knife, and I sliced my finger then too. So me and X-Acto knives don't exactly have the most healthy past relationship, but you know, you live and you learn. So you're gonna just want to kind of find out where Mario sits on his back. It's gonna take a little bit of prying to get him on there, but as long as, if you can see that here, as long as his tail is behind his back, that's where you want him to be. So that's how that's going to go. Eventually we are going to take super glue and glue him on there. But first, we're going to want to sculpt Mario's cape. Also, we're going to want to turn Yoshi's head a little bit. You could just do this by twisting it. If it does happen to pop off, you could just glue it back on. But it does twist pretty well, I've noticed, and I haven't had it break off anytime I've done that. So you could just twist his head to the position you want, and then again just place Mario right back on there, and now you've got Mario riding Yoshi. So again, we're going to super glue his butt down, but we want to sculpt his cape first and try to reposition Mario's arm a little bit, just because the position it's in is a little bit awkward. So we're going to do that now. So we're actually going to pull down Mario's arm slightly, just like this, and we're just going to cut into it very lightly, just so it doesn't want to spring back into action as easily. And then we'll go ahead and we'll fill that cut in with Sculpey just so his arm is in the down position as well. So, like I said, we'll go ahead and we'll start making the cape, and we'll start filling Mario's parts in with Sculpey that need to be filled in. So we're just going to take our first chunk of Sculpey, and we're just going to roll it out first into a ball, and then we'll flatten it and cut it into a triangular shape. So once you have the Sculpey flattened out, again, cut it into a triangle. You don't want it to be too big, obviously, because it is a cape. It has to go on him. So cut it into triangular shape. Leave the top flat. Don't make it a perfectly pointy triangle, because it does have to go around his neck, and it'll look totally awkward if you cut it completely flat. So just cut off your edges, and you should be left with a shape pretty similar to this, and that will end up being Mario's cape. So we'll just go here, and we'll place it on his back. And you are left with a shape pretty much like that. Now, obviously, when we bake it, this is going to be attached to him. We don't just want him to be having a straight cape like that, though. That's a little awkward. We want it to have a little bit of a flow to it, because if he was riding Yoshi, there would be wind going through it. So we're just going to bend it slightly in some areas, give it a little bit of a crinkle, make like that air is flowing through there. And then I like to point it up slightly as if it was flapping. So That's a little bit of a better shape in my opinion. It just looks like there is some motion going through there and some air blowing through that cape. Just like that. Now, his cape is not just attached at his neck. He does wear a collar. So we are going to have to give him a little collar strap. So again, we'll just roll this into a long strand and we'll wrap that around his neck. And then once it's wrapped around, you're going to have something like that, an effect like that. And you are going to want to blend that in a little bit because as you can see, if you look up close, you can obviously see it overlapping, but you want the clay to blend so it does look like one solid piece. So we're going to go ahead and just take our finger and rub it in until the clay from the cape and the clay from around his neck start to blend in. So it looks like one solid piece and not two pieces that attach to each other. Alright, and then I didn't mention it earlier, but I did buy some Sculpey tools. They do help a little bit. You don't need them. They're not a necessity. You could use anything you have to sculpt with. I used to always use my fingers, and then I figured, why not invest in some tools? So I did buy a set of Sculpey tools. This one's just kind of like a flat rubbery piece. The heads are actually interchangeable. It comes with 6 different heads. It was about $15, but it does help to sculpt a little bit. And flatten some areas out. So that's what I'm going to use to blend in his cape area. Again, you could use your fingers if you have small enough fingers. If you have any other flat kind of tool, it doesn't really matter. This is made by Sculpey, which is why it was so much money, but you could use anything that you might have. So once that's blended in, you now have Mario's cape. What I'm going to do now is, I don't believe I did this on my first custom, but I'm actually going to do just a little knot because the cape does tie in the front around his neck as if it was like a bed sheet that any kid or like a bed sheet or a towel that any kid would have done when they were younger. I know I did, as if you were acting like a superhero. So it does tie around the front. So I'm just going to make a few little balls here that are just going to act as those knots in the front. So I'm going to take a piece right about there, and then I'll just fold that in half. And then crisscross them so that I have a nice little knot shape right there. And then we'll go ahead and stick that right on the front. And then again, now it's going to look something like that, but we want to sculpt that a little bit better to just give it more definition so we actually could tell kind of what it is and it doesn't just look like a blob on the front of his cape. Now this part, keep in mind, this is going to be behind Yoshi's head. You're not going to see it too much. But again, sometimes the little details, you do see them every now and again. So it's nice to have them there. So it's going to look something like that. It's a little bit better blended there. And it looks a little bit more tied than if it was just like something slipped over his head. So there we have his cape. Now we've got to fill in his hand again. He has that hole in his hand from when we removed the fire. So we're just going to take a piece of clay and just shove that in there and let it fill the hole. And let that blend in with his hand. So it's in his hand. We're just going to scrape off the excess with our fingers, and this is a pretty easy part, pretty self-explanatory. Just fill the hole with clay. So once his hand is filled with clay, we'll just cut out the excess that's between his fingers now, because we don't want his fingers to be webbed. So we'll just take our X-Acto knife and go between each finger and get out that excess clay. Alright, so there we go. We removed the clay from between his fingers. His fingers don't look webbed anymore, so that is now complete. We have his cape. We have his fingers complete, and now we're just going to want to bring his arm again down slightly. And now there's a little bit of a gap in between his arm, so we're just going to fill that with a little bit of clay, which means we will need a little bit of red paint, which I did not mention earlier. But you will need a little bit of red paint, unless you don't want to move his arm. I mean, that's your option. Again, it's your custom. Do what you want, what you feel is best. Your artistic expression is your own. It is totally up to you what you want to do. The main thing to think about when you are making a custom is that it is yours. If it makes you happy, don't worry what other people are going to say about it. Don't worry about making it look accurate to what it does in the game. If you want a neon pink Yoshi, and there is no neon pink Yoshis in the Mario world, make a neon pink Yoshi. It's yours. It's totally up to you. Who cares what other people say? So yeah, we'll fill his arm like that. It's a little bit difficult because it does want to still go up, and when it does go up, it just pushes the clay out slightly, so we might not be able to get it completely down. I believe what I actually did on my first one was I glued his arm to his leg like that with super glue, and then I filled it in with clay. So that's actually what I'm going to do this time as well. Again, if you don't want to move his arm, if you don't want to do any of those steps, don't do them. But this is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to take a tiny, tiny dot of super glue gel. This is from the dollar store. It's a pack of 2 for $1. Pretty good deal. The gel dries a lot quicker, I find, than the regular super glue. So I'm just going to put a tiny dot on his leg right there, and I'm going to bring his arm down into that super glue and just hold it there for a few seconds until it sticks. Alright, so there we have it. Now his arm is stuck to his leg, so it's not going to fling up in the air anymore. This is better, especially if he's riding Yoshi. This looks more like when we put him on, it looks like he's holding on to Yoshi, or just like clutching his legs and giving himself more stability while he's riding Yoshi. So again, now we're going to want to fill in his arm, since the hole is slightly bigger now that we extended his arm even more. Again, a lot of this is trial and error. You find out what works for what you're trying to do. Again, this was one of my first customs, so I don't exactly remember. It wasn't exactly yesterday that I made this guy, so if you hear me saying things like, oh yeah, I forgot, we should do that, that's why. Because again, a lot of it's trial and error. You just got to figure out how you want it to look and figure out a way to make that work. So, alright, now his arm is filled in. It's going to look something like that. When we bake it, we'll have to paint it after it's all baked. But for the most part, Mario is basically done for now. And we're going to, of course, again, want to make sure he fits on top of Yoshi. And as soon as he does, we know he's ready to be baked. So, Yoshi's arm gets in the way, so you're going to want to lift that before you put Mario on. And then just fit him right on his back, just like that. Again, make sure his tail is behind Mario's butt. That will give him the most security and hold him in place the best. And it should look something like that. Now, I don't exactly like the way Mario's face is, since it is behind Yoshi's spikes, if you want to call them that. So I'm going to figure out a way to reposition these spikes. What I did on my original custom was these bottom 2 spikes, I actually cut them off because that allows Mario to get closer to Yoshi's head, and then you can position him better where his face won't be touching Yoshi. So let's remove Mario, and I'm going to cut off these bottom 2 spikes. Again, just do it very slowly, very carefully, and just remove those spikes. On my first one, I actually added them back on. I sculpted my own and added them back on. So I might do that this time. I'll just see how it looks once they're removed. So first spike is removed, as you can see, and then we'll go ahead and do the second one. Remove as much as it remove as much of it as you possibly can. That's going to ensure the best fit for Mario. So now if we go ahead and put Mario back on, it's going to be a little bit easier to get him on. As you can see, he definitely gets closer to Yoshi's head. And we can position him in such a way now that his face is not on top of Yoshi's head. So again, once this is all the clay is dry and everything, we'll have a lot more maneuverability, but it's a little bit difficult to position him now without ruining the clay. So we're going to go ahead and pop him in the oven in just a second. And when that is done, we'll go ahead and start painting him up and glue him down. Okay, so our Mario is done baking. He was baked for about 10 minutes at 250 degrees. This is slightly less than it recommends for the Sculpey on the package. That's just because these are plastic toys. Even when I take them out at 250 after 10 minutes, they're very, very mushy. So I like to leave it in less. Sculpey is still hard. It's still in place. It's not pudgy anymore. So it works. Again, you could experiment and do it ever you want. Again, I do 10 minutes at 250 and it works perfectly fine. So now that our Mario is done, of course, we're going to get into the painting part of it. So in the interim, I did get my paints out. I went and got red and white because I am going to need those colors. And I got my paintbrushes and my little paint disposable thing. So first we're going to go ahead and we'll start with the red, just because that's on his arm. That's the quickest part. So we'll just pour a little bit of red paint out, and I have a variety of paintbrushes. I primarily use my smallest one, just because these are small toys. This is about the size I use. There are much smaller paintbrushes. This works for me, so this is what I'm going to use. So this is Apple Barrel Red Apple Paint. I found that it works pretty good. It matches his red pretty decently. So we'll just go ahead and paint that on his arm. Cover up that clay that we put when we bent his arm. So we'll just fill all that in, paint the red all around, and then we'll let that dry on its own. So while that's drying, as you can see right there, it's filled in a little bit. We'll do another coat probably. But as that's drying, we'll go ahead and we'll start doing the yellow. The yellow is going to be our primary color. This is Folk Art School Bus Yellow. This is pretty much the only yellow I use. Most of the paints I use are Folk Art. Folk Art about $1.50 at Joann's Fabrics. They're probably less at Walmart, but of course Walmart does not have the same selection that a craft store is going to have. So yeah, I primarily use Folk Art. The Apple Barrel is, I believe it used to be like 89 cents at Walmart. It might have gone up now. It's definitely $1 at Joann's. So it is the cheapest of the paints, but again, it works really well. Folk Art are thicker than Apple Barrel paints are going to be, but which I don't actually like. So what I do is, I know everybody says to thin your paints before you paint, but I don't buy paint thinner. I actually just put a few drops of water in it, shake it up, and this will just liquefy it a little bit better. Again, I don't know if it's the best solution, but it works for me. I haven't had any problems with it. So this was a very, very thick yellow paint. I've added some water to it, and it has a much more liquidy consistency to it, which works perfectly for what I need it for. So we'll just dump the yellow paint out, and again, we're going to paint the top of his cape here, and then the front of his cape in that yellow. And this will probably need about 3 coats to really fully cover. Yellow is my least favorite color to work with just because it is so light, it never covers quickly. I could use literally 1 coat of black and it completely covers, obviously. But yeah, yellow takes forever to cover. Sometimes it's on the upwards of 4, 5, 6 coats, and it's just a pain in the butt. So I really don't like working with yellow, but gotta do what you gotta do to make these customs, right? So you just want to do small strokes. Try to thin out the paint as much as you can while you're painting. Don't let it clump up. If you could see any lines when it's painted, you're going to see those lines when it's dry. And then those lines are just going to pile on top of each other as you add more coats. So if there's any ridges in the paint, try to get those out. So there's the first layer of yellow on his back, and we'll go ahead and we'll do the front now. Now the front obviously is a much smaller area, so we're going to be real careful not to get it on his skin. Now a lot of people I see like to use masking tape when they're doing certain areas on their amiibo so that the paint doesn't accidentally get on somewhere else. With these paints, they're acrylic paints. I don't find that really necessary. First of all, if you have a steady hand, you're really not going to get that much excess on anywhere else. But beyond that, they're acrylic paints. They come off really, really easily. So if you just take the end of your X-Acto knife, or even your nail, if it's a big enough area, you just go like that, and it'll scrape the paint right off once it's dry. So that masking tape is just an extra step that I don't really find necessary. But again, if you think it's going to help you, go ahead and do it. Alright, so there we have it. His front is now painted. We have to let that dry. So as that dries, we'll move on to our next part, which is just going to be the white, which is inside his hand. And honestly, you can't really tell that it's discolored because the Sculpey itself is white. So we're just going to do one coat of white on his hand just to cover up that Sculpey, even though it's barely noticeable. Again, while all this is drying, keep your hand steady. Obviously, don't grab onto his cape while it's drying. Don't grab his arm to paint his cape while that's drying. Just be aware of where your hands are at all times if you're going to be painting multiple areas at once while the other area is dry. For me, this just makes my life a lot easier. I don't like waiting for paint to dry. It's boring, and if I could get something done while paint is drying, I usually do. Which is why I usually have about 2 to 3 customs, sometimes even more, running at one time, just because while one is drying, I could go ahead and start painting the next one, or sculpting the next one, or just do something on the other custom while the first one is drying. Because that is the most time-consuming part of this entire process, is waiting for that paint to dry. Luckily, these acrylic paints do not take that long to dry. Within a few minutes, they should be completely dry, if that. Some of them dry even quicker than others. So, the first coat of red is dry. So again, now that we've painted the rest, we'll go ahead and we'll start back over and we'll go back to the red. Just put another coat on his arm to fill in that. Again, being careful not to touch his cape in the process because that is still drying. So that yellow is mostly dry. We'll just give it another few seconds to dry itself completely before we continue the next coat, because we don't want the first coat to rub up while we're brushing the second coat on. So far, this is what our Mario looks like. Got our Yoshi ready and waiting. So actually what we're going to do is, while we're waiting for Mario's cape to dry, we'll go ahead and just fill in this little spot with some red paint so that when Mario sits on him, just in case we do see that, we won't see the green of Yoshi, we'll see some red. So we'll fill that in within some red paint just for now. That's one coat. We'll do another 2 coats just to cover it completely before we put Mario on his back. And since that yellow paint is now dry, we'll go ahead and again paint some more. Another coat onto his back of his cape. And luckily, since we are starting with a white Sculpey, the yellow paint is covering much better than if we were going to be painting, say, I don't know, any other color cape, or any other color Sculpey, I should say. So, for example, if you're going to be painting a yellow toad, which I did do recently, I don't like to prime my customs just because it's an extra step and I'm lazy. So I didn't prime my yellow toad, so I left him as he was, and I just started painting the yellow over the red spots on his mushroom cap. And that took forever because putting yellow on top of red does not cover up the red very well, so I needed a lot of coats of yellow, and it was tedious and it was frustrating. So if you are going to be putting yellow over a dark color, try to get a primer and prime it. Honestly, even if you just use white to cover it up first before you get that other color on there, it'll save you a lot of time down the line. So yeah, definitely use a primer if you're going to be using a light color on a darker color. Now, the back of his cape, again, that's the second coat. It looks pretty good. We'll probably need a third coat, possibly a fourth coat, we'll see. And now we're going to go ahead and do the front again. Alright, so there we go. Mario's cape is done. So now we're just going to wait for that to dry before we put on the third coat, and wait for his arm to dry before we put on another coat of that. In the meantime, while the top of his cape dries, we can go ahead and do the black on the bottom of the cape. Now, the bottom of the cape is going to be a little bit difficult since it is already attached to Mario. So we're going to have to be really careful and just... Wow, that was weird. A giant bubble of black paint just came out. So yeah, we're going to have to be really careful when we do this because we're going to have to paint inside the bottom like that. So again, very small strokes, very carefully. Pay attention to what you're doing the whole time, because if you mess up, now you've got black paint in places you don't want black paint, and that's just going to be hard to fix. So again, just small strokes inside there. And the other thing about this is you don't need it to be 110% perfect or completely covered. There's a part right about where Mario's back is going to be touching the cape. If you can't get your paintbrush in there, you're not going to see it because his back is obviously going to cover it. So I am going to try to get up there the best that I can, but again, if there's like a few centimeters that it just plain doesn't reach, it's not a big deal because you're not going to see it. So just think about all these things while you're making your customs. What's going to be seen, what's not going to be seen. It'll make your life a lot easier, and it'll ease a little bit of stress off of you, like, how am I supposed to paint this? I don't have a small enough paintbrush, but nobody's going to see it, so you don't really have to paint it. Now, if you're going to be picking them up and looking under them, and you know it's there, or if it bothers you that it's not painted, go ahead and paint it. Another option is to sculpt the cape and then bake it and then paint it and then put it on Mario. But it's a little hard to keep the shape and make sure it molds to Mario's back perfectly unless you bake it on him. So that's why I try to do it that way. So there you have it. The back of his cape is painted black. Again, we'll do another coat under there in a few minutes. You can't see the black from the back of him, which is good, which is the effect that we want. So we're going to let all that dry. The red is still drying, the yellow is still drying, and the black is still drying. So we're just going to use a few minutes and let all of that dry on its own. While that's drying again, we'll just do a quick coat on the back of Yoshi's shell to cover that red, or to cover that green spot with some red. Again, this is one of those things, the painting on here doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to see it. Mario is going to be sitting on top of it, but if you look closely or somebody picks up your custom and looks really closely at it, it is possible that they would see the shell. But honestly, if the painting isn't perfect, it's really not a big deal because nobody's going to see it. So we'll just put that red paint on the shell, let that dry again. And that red paint on Mario's arm is just about finished. So I'm going to go ahead and do another coat on there, just real quickly. Now, on one of my previous coats of red, I did get a little bit of the red on Mario's glove, so again, I didn't mask it off. I'm just going to go ahead and scrape that right off there. Glove is once again clean. And that yellow of his cape is again just about dry, so we'll go ahead and do our third coat. I'm going to use a little bit of a bigger paintbrush this time just so I can cover more area since it is just a pretty flat area. So yeah. Alright, so we finished painting both amiibos. They are on their final stages of drying. Yoshi's back is dry, and Mario's cape is drying right now. So, as long as we're really careful and we don't touch the cape while we're trying to get him on Yoshi's back, we should be able to place him on Yoshi's back at this time. So, that's what we're going to do. Just going to pull Yoshi's arm to the side a little bit so that he's out of the way when we place Mario on his back. We just want to be careful, of course, not to touch the cape or any parts that are still drying on either of them. So, there we go. Now we've got Mario on his back. Now, he will just sit like that if you didn't want to glue him down for some reason, if you want to have him as a play figure so that they can pull off. Mario will sit like that on Yoshi's back, but I'm going to glue them down for the purposes of only using them as Amiibo. I have no reason for them to be separate entities, so again, we'll just pull him off real quickly, and we'll put some super glue right there on Yoshi's shell. So that when we put Mario on top of him, he will get his butt stuck permanently. So again, pull Yoshi's arm forward and just slide Mario on there. Make sure his tail is behind Yoshi. and just lean him back slightly so that his face is not completely against Yoshi's head. So there you have it. Mario has a slight lean to him. He's on Yoshi's back. Yoshi's arm is wrapped around his foot as if he's holding him in place. So yeah. As you can see, Mario is now stuck to Yoshi. The super glue is drying, so I could hold Mario by his head and he's not falling off Yoshi. I could swing him around and nothing is happening to either of them. So that is pretty much the complete custom. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch up some paint spots now that he's complete. I want him to look, of course, perfect. So anything that might have been messed up when I was putting him on or anything that I just overlooked, now I'm going to go through and just touch up to make sure he's perfect. Alright, so all the final touch-ups are complete. In the interim, I did add Yoshi's second spike back on, so now he has 2 spikes instead of just the one, because it's a little bit weird with just one. It's kind of like a mohawk. So I did add the second one on. I didn't add the third one back in just because there's not enough room, and I don't want it to be touching Mario. So I added the second spike back on. I placed it slightly to the left of its original position because it wouldn't fit in its original position with Mario there now. So I did that. I also added a coat of Mod Podge to Mario's cape. This just gives it a little bit more durability to the clay. And then I went over that Mod Podge with another layer of yellow. So that's all dry. Everything on him is now dry. Again, the super glue is dry. Mario is completely stuck to Yoshi. He's not coming apart. So the next thing I want to do at this point is show you guys this Amiibo in action. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my gamepad with Smash Brothers, and we'll scan it in and see how it works. Alright, so as you can see, we got our gamepad in front of us now, and we've got our Mario/Yoshi Amiibo. So I want you all to take bets real quickly. What do you think this Amiibo is going to scan in as? And we'll go ahead and on the count of 3, we're going to go ahead and put the Amiibo on the gamepad and see who pops up. Now we do have both Mario and Yoshi here, so it could be anyone, right? Of course, we use Yoshi's base, but we're just going to have to see. So, 1, 2, 3. It is Mario. But, is it Mario? Or, because I think it might also be Yoshi. Yes, this is actually both a Mario and a Yoshi Amiibo. It has both NFC chips in the base. That's something I didn't show you guys. While the clay was baking, I went ahead and swapped out the NFC chips and put them both into a single Amiibo. So this Amiibo scans in, as you can see, both as Mario and as Yoshi. And of course, they're both playable as both characters. So that's it for this tutorial. If you want to know how to do that, click the subscribe button, comment below. Let me know that that's something you want to see, how to put both NFC chips in a single base, and maybe I'll just make a video on that too. So go ahead, let me know, rate the video, send it to your friends, all the Amiibo hunters, all the Amiibo collectors, and all the Amiibo customizers out there in your life. Let them know about this video, and yeah, good luck customizing. Feel free to put some links in the description of your customs, or send them to me directly. I'd love to see them. And thanks for watching. Hope I helped. Once again, I just wanted to say thank you for watching my video. Thanks for sticking it out if you made it this far. And this Amiibo right here of Mario and Yoshi is going to be available for sale on my Etsy store. So if you want to click the link below in the description, you can go ahead and check out this Mario and Yoshi listing. And if you like it, go ahead and pick it up. It makes a great birthday gift. Makes a great Christmas gift. Christmas is right around the corner. Makes a great Halloween gift. If you want to give it away for Halloween, why not? Or if you just want it for yourself, go ahead and pick it up. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's at Captain Alex. That's at CPTNALEX. I'll put the link here. And all my new Amiibos are always posted on Instagram first, and then I head over and put them on Reddit and everything like that. But yeah, follow me on Instagram at Captain Alex. and you will get the most up-to-date information on all the Amiibos that I am making. And you can add this one to your personal collection. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.